Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
David was raised in New Thought and had a profound awakening at age 13, after which he dedicated his life to helping others. In 2004, David co-founded the New Thought Center for Spiritual Living and served as its senior minister for 15 years. Reverend David currently serves as spiritual director for the Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. It was in the co-founding of that New Thought Center that he served for 15 years that he also served with David York, who is a dear friend, and we're so grateful that they are reunited today. Reverend David was inducted into the Martin Luther King Jr. Board of Preachers at Morehouse College in 2009. A social justice activist. He has served on the board of directors for the Community of Welcoming Congregations, a Portland-based alliance with the mission of providing a voice for LGBTQIA and allied people of faith. Reverend David writes a monthly column, Philosophy in Action, for Science of Mind magazine, and received an honorary Doctor of Divinity degree from the Centers for Spiritual Living in 2014. In 2015, Dr. David was inducted into the College of Bishops and Affirming Faith Leaders by the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries, and in 2016 was recognized with a Force for Good Award from Unity of Sacramento. Well, we are so privileged to have you and to hear what it is, the message that you brought us. Please welcome Reverend David Alexander. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, thank you so much. She read all of that. She said, I can skip and just do what I want, right? And I said, yes. And she read all of that. But that's all right. That's good. Good morning, Unity of Houston. It is so good to be with you. Listen, I want to thank you for making me feel at home as I hail from Atlanta by turning off the AC. Thank you so much. It's all right. In the South, we say you're not preaching unless you sweat. So you're making my job easy this morning. I want to thank Michael Gott for this amazing opportunity to be with you this morning. I want to thank Dr. David York for the 15 years we had together. Every time we get together, we talk about the magic of ministry that we had the pleasure of doing together. And I hope you all know how blessed and privileged you are to have this great man leading up your amazing music ministry. I could spend the whole time telling stories there, but that's not why I was brought here this morning. So maybe some other time. And Ken, in that last song, in a three-piece suit. Give it up for him one more time. Yes. So I bring you greetings from Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. I'm also the chair of the Leadership Council for Centers for Spiritual Living. And I want you to know that I am committed to a radical spiritual awakening in humanity that calls upon our moral imagination and personal development. I've been working with a affirmation lately that comes from a book called The Magic of Intuition by Florence Scovel Shinn. Anybody know that book? Great little book. And I believe it's in chapter 5. She says, now is the appointed time. Now is the appointed time. And ever since I read that, it's just been, in the last several months, been ringing in my consciousness over and over again. Take a breath and say that with me. Now is the appointed time. It's the appointed time for your awakening. It's the appointed time for the expansion of what we know. It's the appointed time to waken up to our divinity. It's the appointed time to really understand the radical implications of what we teach in this New Thought tradition. It's the appointed time to claim the radical healing power of what we have. It's the appointed time to start my timer so I don't overextend my welcome here. All right. Now is the appointed time to apply the wisdom of who we are to a world that is divided, confused, and at war with itself. Now is the appointed time to understand the wisdom of oneness, which is my title today, the value of our teaching in a divided world. Make no mistake, our teaching is needed in the world today. Our consciousness is needed in the world today. Your consciousness is needed in the world today. And if I was in a Pentecostal church this morning, I would say, look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, go ahead, let's practice. Neighbor, your consciousness is needed in the world. Turn to the other person on the other side, said, neighbor, your consciousness is needed in the world. Yeah, you're doing good. Little Pentecostal practice there. Now, if I throw off the jacket, we're going to have to pull out the B3 ham and then have ourselves a real good time. But your consciousness is needed in the world. Make no mistake, today, the ills that our world suffers from are many. They are loud, and they're not going away anytime soon. In fact, if we're telling the truth today, it may get darker before it gets more light. Now, I don't mean anybody harm today by saying such a non-traditional New Thought thing. I don't mean to frighten you, but I do mean to awaken you to the realities of our current lived experience. If we can be blunt about it, can I be blunt about it? It's midnight in America. If I can really tell the truth after the Supreme Court's most latest actions, it's a little bit past 12:01. But take heart, my kumbaya-loving New Thought community. Be sure that the isms of the world are nothing more than the thought forms expressing reality, and that there's always a greater truth that is always consciousness in action. That consciousness is always in action. That's what we're currently seeing. And that idea that consciousness creates form, consciousness creates reality, is both a blessing and a curse. And it's a blessing because we know that what the mind can do, the mind can undo, right? And it's a curse because we know that we are currently living in the consciousness that has gone before us. The consciousness of those that have come before us and put the things in place through error thinking of us and them and all the other things that are going on. The consciousness that has gone before us creates the reality that we're standing in today. Am I making sense? There is an atmosphere or a consciousness that has gone before us which seeks to dismantle the rights of citizens and treat the majority of us like second-class citizens. And I say us because while it doesn't look like I'm the target, in fact, if I'm really honest about it, I look like the one who's causing all the problems. Cisgendered, heteronormative male. And so while I might not look like the target, I believe in the power of oneness. I believe, as Ernest Holmes, the founder of Religious Science Centers for Spiritual Living, says, that we are one body with many expressions. We are one body with many expressions. I believe deeply in the wisdom of oneness, which means that there is no other. Only one thing happening here. One consciousness unfolding, the all. But this is just the beginning. Understanding such wisdom, what I call the valuable spiritual coin that we bring to the marketplace of spiritual ideas. You know, there are people gathered all around the country, and I'm sure right here in this city, in sanctuaries just as beautiful as this, who don't believe and are not peddling the spiritual coin of oneness. Right? There's a reason you chose here and not somewhere else. Maybe you passed a few of them on the way here. But we believe in the spiritual coin of oneness, but believing in that is just the beginning. If we follow the radical implications of oneness, what we know is that such wisdom does not mean that we don't call out bad behavior or dangerous lies or attacks on our siblings in humanity. Silence is not oneness. Silence is complicit participation in division. It's promoting the separation of our one family. But we offer a powerful spiritual coin unique in this marketplace. Oneness infused with this wisdom requires a disciplined mind and responsible actions of demonstration. A disciplined mind and responsible actions of demonstration. A disciplined mind because the world is constantly, I don't know if you noticed, constantly trying to divide us from each other. The categories of us and them and the haves and the have-nots and all of the other isms and categories of the world. But our response to that through a disciplined mind is not simply to say, well, we're all one, and so let's not pay attention to any of that. That's what I call a new thought lobotomy. You know what a new thought lobotomy is? It's all good all the time. It's just all good all the time. Let's just affirm that it's all good. It's all going to work out. There's something deeper and more radically inclusive than that in the principle of oneness that we need to understand. It requires responsible action because being one with everything is not an order at a hot dog stand. Come on, somebody. Being one with everything is not an order at a hot dog stand. It's a radical call to be the vibration of God's wholeness in this earth. That's what it is. So every time you affirm, I am one with the power, I'm one with the presence, I'm one with God, I'm one with love, I'm one with you, I'm one with humanity, you are inviting yourself to be the radical vibration of wholeness on this planet. Am I making sense? You see, oneness without responsibility is simply cheap privilege. Oneness without responsibility is simply cheap privilege. And let me be clear, there is such a thing as costly privilege. If you really believe in the power of oneness and you allow your whole being to imbibe in that energy and that manifestation, and you allow yourself to be an expression of it, it will cost you something. When I started working with Bishop Yvette Flunder in the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries, I went to her center in Oakland many years ago when I was Director of Strategic Alliances for Centers for Spiritual Living, and I said, our visions are really aligned, and there's work that we can do together in the world. And I went to her conference, and afterwards I had a private meeting with her, and I said, I want to know what we can bring to the table. What can we do? How can we partner? I was motivated and inspired by her work. If you don't know who she is, look her up. You actually all know who she is because, you know her partner, Mother Shirley Miller, because you know the song Oh Happy Day, and that's her voice and the lead song of it. If you watch the Summer of Soul documentary about the music festival, you'll see the Hawkins singers and Shirley Miller singing that song. Bishop Flunder is in the backup singers. They've been married for 35 years now. Beautiful couple. And when I sat in her office, I said, what can I do? What can we do? What can we bring to the table? How can we work together? She turned to me and she said, you're asking the wrong question. She said, the real question you need to be asking yourself is, what are you willing to lose? Because if you stand with me in this work, it will cost you something. It cost me something when I first stood up in my pulpit and said, Black Lives Matter. There were people that walked out. There were people that never came back when the sign went on the front of the door. There were members in powerful positions in the church that sat down with me and they said, we want you to know it's not that we disagree with you. It's just that, maybe sometimes we're tired of hearing it every single week. And as I held back the tears, I said, to be honest with you, I'm tired of needing to say it every week. And I cried on the way home that day because my Zambian-born wife was waiting for me, our 2 African-American children, and I knew that I could not tell her about that meeting when she said, honey, how was your day? Because I knew if I did, she'd never step in that church again. It will cost you something if you want to be a radical voice for oneness in this world. There is such a thing as expensive privilege. Therefore, when I adopted the thinking that I made oneness a tenet of my own spiritual practice, I surrendered my cheap privilege of standing on the sidelines. I surrendered my heteronormative, cisgendered whiteness to stand separate from the rest of the suffering and pain of the world. And today, I move through the world with a kind of costly privilege. It's an honor to do the work that I do in the world, but it's not lost on me that it costs me something. You see, I don't believe in a theology of privilege. I believe in a theology of liberation. I believe that, as Ernest Holmes said, the ultimate goal of life is to be emancipated from discord of every nature, and that goal is sure to be attained by all. But you see, beloveds, it surely won't be attained by all if we hold our freedom as some vested right protected as the byproduct of our own consciousness alone, thereby distinguishing ourselves from all others who have yet to awaken to their true nature, and giving ourselves no other choice but to wish them well, or as we would say in the South, bless their hearts. Oh, bless their hearts. They just don't know the God I know. They don't know that it's good all the time. They don't know that prosperity is their true nature. They don't know that it's all love and light. Bless their hearts. Amen. No, it requires something deeper than that, I'm afraid. You see, you and I did not get here alone. To create a better world for everyone, we need to lay down the myth of the self-made man or person. This is spiritual arrogance and hubris of the worst kinds. It's a direct violation of the principle of oneness. I don't care how you made it in this world, how successful, how you pulled yourself up by your own bootstraps and you studied and you came from a poor family and whatever the case may be, we are in love with this myth of the idea of the self-made person. But you did not get here alone. Somebody held your hand. Somebody walked you across the street. Somebody taught you to read. Somebody answered your email. Somebody picked up your resume and gave you your first chance. Somebody gave you a shot when nobody else would. You did not make it here alone. You stand on the legacy of those that have gone before you and those that rallied around you. I stand here because of 15 years with this man as my music director, who was more than a music director, but one who came out of the fire of the phoenix of a large ministry burning to its demise and rising up out of those ashes. And I was a little wet behind the ear, know-nothing minister. And he, along with others, stood around me as a young sapling and held me until my back spine grew. You didn't make it here alone. Somebody brought you here. And this oneness principle that we have undergirds the power of our healing and the transformative nature of our teaching. We say that the source of our healing is found in paying close attention to the body, to the symptoms. Louise Hay, the greatest practitioner of religious science has ever known, wrote how many people have the little blue book of her healings? Few people here, right? So any symptom you have, you can look it up and say, well, what does that mean? What does it mean when I got a headache or a backache or a limp or a whatever? And she'll say, oh, it has to do with your heart, or it has to do with holding on to resentment or feeling unsupported or whatever it might be. And then there's an affirmation that you can say. The source of our healing is in paying close attention to the signals that the body is giving us. That our happiness and secureness is secured in a mindful awareness of those symptoms, and that there's a spiritual intuition that will guide us to pay attention and to know what to say to get our mind right. We also say that we have the power to bring the future into the now, and that future is anchored in our affirmations and in our vision, in the declarative power of our word. As a faith body, we affirm oneness with divine peace and wholeness and prosperity as our outright birthright, as it is for everyone. And these are beautiful and true and valuable tenets of our faith. But the question on my mind today, and has been for some time, is how do we apply this affirmative and declarative faith approach to the hour that we are in? I'm not sure if you noticed, but now is the appointed time to apply what we know. Now is the time to decide if oneness is really what we stand on. The universal truth that makes our own healing possible is the same power that makes the healing of the world possible. Now is the time to awaken to the prophetic and radical implications of our teachings. Oh, I know that at the surface it looks like one could understand the wisdom of our teaching solely as the personal philosophy meant for the individual alone. But this would be a misreading of our teaching and a violation of that principle of oneness. Because while our teaching is always applied at the personal level, it has always had social implications. Some people think that this movement towards justice work is sort of a new trend or a new turn in the New Thought tradition. I'm here to tell you that it's not. You go to William Walker Atkins' book in 1905, The Principles of New Thought, where he says, when oneness is realized in the heart of man, injustice will cease to express. When oneness is realized in the heart of man, injustice will cease to express. Now, I don't know if this moment is really any different when we're preaching now. Is any different than any hour that has gone before us, any darker than any time that has gone before us. Perhaps it is that we're just more awake and aware. But I hesitate to make that claim because too often in my own journey of awakening to the troubles that surround us, Too often I have been met with a stern and sobering recognition from my black and brown siblings in community who look at me and say, "Welcome to the party. By the way, you're late." And so in reference to the claim that we make as a teaching with access to intuition and guidance of the universe and to harness our own teaching through the power of oneness, I want to know, what does it mean to the one body, not just my body, but to the one body of humanity, when these are the symptoms? What does it mean to the one body when the symptoms are that black and brown bodies are in ever-increasing danger? What does it mean to the one body when my now 6'4", 17-year-old black son, who at the time was 10 years old, could not play an innocent game of chase in the alley when we lived in a wealthy neighborhood because his friend handed him a toy gun made of Legos? And I didn't want him to be the next Tamir Rice. What does it mean that our school children spend so much time on active shooter drills that while they're doing it, others are busy changing the words of the textbook so that they'll never actually read any real American history? What does it mean? What does it mean to the one body when our drinking water isn't safe? What does it mean to the one body when women are stripped of reproductive rights and body autonomy and regulated as second-class citizens for a second time? What does it mean to the one body when our trans saints and LGBTQAI community is in the legislative crosshairs in over 27 states right now? What does it mean? What does it mean when these are the symptoms that the body is expressing? It means that our collective consciousness is sick. It means that now is the appointed time. It means that now is the time to understand the power that we bring to the table, to change the conversation, to change the vibration, and to change the trajectory that we are on. It means that the moment you accept that you are created in the image and likeness of God, the moment that you accept this idea that there's something bigger than you that heals you and transforms your life in every meditation and affirmation that you do, in every class that you take here at Unity of Houston, it means the moment that you accept that energy into your being, and are therefore the vehicle through which God's wholeness expresses itself, is the same moment that you must take responsibility for all of the places in the world where that wholeness is not revealing itself. Now that doesn't mean that you're responsible for healing everything or fixing everything. It means that you hold a key and a piece to the puzzle to bring forward your gifts, your contribution to healing where you can. It means that we can no longer afford to separate ourselves from the pain of the world. It means that freedom and liberation come through the hands and the feet and the body of God, which is you. Our thoughts are powerful, but we cannot Care Bear our way into a world that works for everyone. My Gen Xers understand the Care Bear reference. You remember the Care Bears? Right? Love and light through their belly button. Bing. It's going to take more than just love and light. It's going to take some radical honesty. It's going to take looking into the consciousness that it surrounds us and asking ourselves what is ours to do to heal it, because we know that thoughts can heal things. It means that now is the appointed time. It means now we affirm to allow the divine idea of the body of wholeness to reveal itself through and as us, and that we take on our piece, to treat and move our feet, as we say in the CSL tradition, to direct ourselves towards a world that works for everyone. Let us see clearly and plainly the path before us, and that the healing of the world runs through you. It runs through me. It runs through Unity of Houston, Centers for Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. It's why we need places like this, because we come in the doors and first responsibility is to get things right in our own consciousness, to get ourselves in right relationship with that divine power and that divine wisdom, to take up our own bed and walk, as the scripture reminds us, to remind ourselves that we are to be in right relationship with a power that is greater than we are. But never think for a moment that that's the sole reason that you walked in these doors. You see, there's an old saying that says, hurting people hurt people. But there's an even deeper truth that says, whole people heal people. You are here to get whole. You are here to claim your authority. You are here to understand the power of your word. You are here to get in right relationship with that divine power, not so that you can have the car and the house that you want, but so that you can be a vessel through which the healing of the planet is made possible. That's why you're here. Now, if it looks like getting your goods, go ahead and get your goods, but understand that you're only doing that so that you can be more comfortable and more secure in the gifts that you have to give to the world. It's not separate. The healing the world doesn't leave your good out. There's another myth that needs to die, which is to say if I give myself of service to the world, somehow I'm going to lose my lunch. But if God is all there is, how is that possible? How are your needs going to be left out if you're in service to the greater good of the planet? They're not going to be left out because God is all that there is. So understand where you are in relationship to that divine idea. What would happen if we approach social justice issues not from an us and them and fighting our enemies perspective, but from a grounded wholeness? That because you are, I am, and because I am, you are. That oneness that says I would no more let my own child grow up without enough food or adequate clothing or shelter than I would another's child. What would happen? What would happen if we really decided to see the face of God in everything? You see, applying New Thought principles to the isms of the world has the potential to yield solutions on a transformative level, like never seen before. And the isms are many. We could name patriarchy and the misogyny and the racism and the classism and all of the other things. And at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta, we've dedicated ourselves to naming it and finding a way to use the principles of consciousness to walk through it by minding our own consciousness first. We produced a body of work called The Recovery from the Lie of Whiteness. By the way, if I say anything that offends you today, Michael will be back soon. I mean, that's the beauty of being a guest, you know. I won't be here next week. He'll be back, and you're like, oh, thank you, God. But we like to call it like it is in the South, because recovering from the lie of whiteness means applying the 12-step traditions, which is what we've done in that work. That we're sick with a consciousness that has made our collective lives unbearable, and we have to take it one day at a time, one step at a time, being radically honest with ourselves. Yes. So this work requires, by the way, I'll cover more about that in the workshop this afternoon. It requires the courage to be radically honest with ourselves and to actually do the work. We can actually no longer afford, if we ever could, the convenient scapegoat of individual consciousness on problems that have systemic and collective roots. You see, taking the diseased manifestations of our collective amnesia and making them the responsibility of one individual's consciousness is nothing less than spiritual gaslighting, and it needs to stop. We ought to be less concerned about the people that such courageous commitment will offend or scare off from our churches, and more concerned about the consequences to those on the margins who we claim oneness with will suffer if we fail to step up to the plate, because now is the appointed time. The truth is that New Thought is made for this moment. And the truth is that our laws that we teach have never changed. Demonstration is only possible to those who put in the effort. We believe that the ultimate goal of life is a complete emancipation from discord of every nature. And that goal is sure to be attained by all. Or to quote the great Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman from Chicago, Illinois, where Reverend, your speaker next week, Sheila McKeithen from UFBL. We were together when she recorded that in Chicago at the INTA conference in Johnny Coleman's house, a great temple of New Thought legacy. To quote her, who said, "It works if you work it." Finally, we must remember that our greatest currency in the world is the spiritual coin of oneness. But we must also remember that the banknote of oneness is cashed in acts of justice. Let's pray together. invite you to take a deep breath. And here's what I know. The Spirit of God is moving through this place this day. The Spirit of God has spoken and is speaking through the music, the meditation, the message. And that each individual here, in person and online, has received the direct impress of this divine word. It moves down to the cellular level to shake loose anything that needs to be shaken loose in consciousness, to motivate, to engage, to inquire and to question, to urge us to study even more and to lean in. It's a call to expand, to allow evolution of the presence of God on earth to take place. And so I affirm that that is happening here, now. I affirm that that is happening here and now, always, through this great place, Unity of Houston, and through our collective consciousness in the world, and through the sacred yes that comes to you. The sacred yes that comes to you. The world becomes a brighter place. For this and so much more, I'm truly grateful and thankful this day. As I release this word, knowing that it's already done and is now ours to step into it fully and to experience it. I say thank you, God. And so it is. Thank you. Peace and blessings.
Watching this message today, I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.